begun, and already I regretted walking through the gates of the family estate. Laughter echoed from the garden tent, where distant relatives sipped chilled drinks under crystal chandeliers suspended from the ceiling like royalty. I could already feel the cold stares brushing against my back like invisible darts. "Look who finally decided to show up." My stepmother's voice sliced through the air, dripping with sugar-coated venom. "Still single, still a waitress. How utterly predictable." Her words clanged in my ears like silverware being dropped onto marble. I stood still, gripping the handle of my tiny black clutch. I hadn't even made it 5 steps in. My dad, lounging in a white linen shirt by the champagne table, let out a smug chuckle. "Maybe she's here for the free food," he said, raising his glass without even looking at me. I hear tips don't stretch as far these days. Every nerve in my body screamed to turn around and walk back down the driveway. But instead, I exhaled slowly, lips sealed, and kept walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was dragging the weight of every insult, every dismissal, every time they'd reminded me I wasn't good enough. Cousins I barely knew smirked behind champagne flutes. My half-sister looked at me like I'd shown up in rags, not a modest satin dress I'd saved up for over 6 months. I felt like furniture no one remembered buying. But I didn't come here for their approval. I came to keep a promise. And the timing was perfect. Because just as my stepmother lifted her arm to mockingly wave me over, a sound rumbled in the distance. It wasn't thunder. It was louder, rhythmic, mechanical, unmistakable. Everyone's heads turned as the sound grew closer, blades slicing through the summer air. And then they saw it. A sleek black helicopter emerged over the trees and began to descend into the open field behind the estate. The champagne glasses stilled. Conversations halted mid-sentence. People stood up from their seats. "What the hell?" my father muttered, shielding his eyes from the sun. "Are we being raided?" my uncle half-joked, half-panicked. The helicopter touched down with cinematic precision, kicking up dust and dry leaves. The side door opened slowly, and out stepped a man in a tailored navy suit, wearing sunglasses and a look that could command boardrooms and battlefields alike. He scanned the crowd once. Then his gaze locked on me, and he smiled. My stepmother's jaw went slack. "Is that?" My dad blinked like his mind couldn't process what he was seeing. "No, it can't be." The man walked toward me, his steps calm, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. Every camera phone at the party had been raised. Whispers rippled like static in a storm. He reached me, and without a word, slipped his hand into mine. "Sorry I'm late," he said softly, his voice laced with warmth. "Didn't want to steal the spotlight too early." I laughed, but my hands were trembling slightly. I dreamed of this moment, but never imagined it would feel so calm, so just right. "I think you're right on time," I whispered. And then I turned to face my family, the people who had belittled me, dismissed me, laughed at my job, my clothes, my life. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because the look on their faces, it said everything. The silence after his arrival wasn't peaceful. It was explosive in its own way. That kind of stillness only happens when everyone's too stunned to speak, when all the words people thought they had lined up fall out of order. My stepmother's fingers clutched the rim of her wine glass, so tightly her knuckles went white. My dad, he just stared at the man beside me like he'd seen a ghost. The confidence he wore earlier? Gone. Replaced by confusion, then disbelief. I could practically hear the questions racing through their heads. Who is he? Why is he here? What is he doing with her? But the truth was better than anything they could guess. Is that Ethan Langston? My cousin Jake whispered, barely audible over the hum of the helicopter blades slowing behind us. The tech guy? The billionaire? Someone gasped. Oh, it spread fast. Faster than I expected. Whispers like wildfire. Some mouths gaping in awe, others twisting with jealousy. Ethan turned toward the group and extended his hand casually toward my father. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Davenport. My dad blinked slowly. I'm sorry, who are you? Ethan Langston, CEO of Lumentech. He smiled gently and shook his hand with no trace of arrogance. "I've been seeing your daughter for almost a year now. You must be proud of her." A cough escaped my stepmother's throat, sharp and dry. "Wait, what?" she scoffed. "You're dating her?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Yes, ma'am." She let out a single laugh, the kind that masks fear. "But she's just a waitress." Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if confused. "She's the woman I love." That shut her right up. I stood beside him, my hand still in his, feeling a strange sense of calm wrap around me. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about rubbing their noses in anything. It was about being seen, finally, completely. "You've been seeing her for a year?" Dad's voice sounded hoarse. "Why didn't we know about this?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Because you never ask." They had no idea how many nights I'd cried wondering why I still tried with them. No idea how many days I worked double shifts not just to pay rent but to build something for myself. No clue how many times I almost gave up. And yet here I was. "You kept her a secret," my half-sister muttered. "A waitress? Seriously?" "She's not a secret," Ethan said firmly. "She's the best thing that's ever happened to me." The words hit me harder than I expected. I blinked back tears. "Why are you even here?" Dad finally snapped, his pride bruising into rage. "You think this is funny? You show up here with a helicopter like it's a joke." Ethan turned to him.
Calm.
Collected.
Honest.
"I came here to meet her family. I came because she deserved to be walked into this party, like she mattered." He paused, glancing back at me. "Because she does." The tent was completely quiet now. No one even moved. It was like time paused. I gently pulled my hand from his and stepped forward. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I didn't come here to prove anything," I said. "I came to say goodbye." Dad's face twitched. "Goodbye." I nodded. To the old version of me, the one who kept coming back to a family that never saw her worth. Their silence wasn't loud anymore. It was heavy. My stepmother opened her mouth, but Ethan stepped forward. "I know you probably have opinions. I'm sure they're colorful, but I'm not here to win anyone over. I'm here to protect her peace." His voice wasn't angry. It was protective.
Warm.
Unapologetic. Dad tried to smile like it was still all a big misunderstanding. "Come on, sweetheart, you know we tease. It's a reunion. Everyone jokes around." "No, Dad," I said softly. "You laughed at me. Every time. And I stayed quiet. But not anymore." I turned to the rest of them, the cousins, the aunts, the smirking faces. "I'm not bitter," I said. "I'm just done." Then I turned back toward the helicopter, Ethan right beside me. "You ready?" he asked gently. I nodded. "Let's go." As we walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. And as we lifted into the air, watching the family reunion shrink below us, I knew something deeper had shifted.
Not just in them.
In me. The helicopter soared above the fields, slicing through the golden light of late afternoon. I sat beside Ethan, headphones on, heart still pounding, not from the altitude, but from everything I'd just said. Everything I'd finally let go of. Ethan reached over and gently squeezed my hand, the kind of touch that didn't demand anything, just reminded me I wasn't alone. "You okay?" he asked through the mic. I looked out the window at the patchwork of land below. For the first time in years, "I think I am." And I meant it. There was something surreal about rising above the place where people once made you feel so small. Like leaving behind old versions of yourself, ones built from apologies you were never owed. We landed on the private helipad just outside the cottage Ethan rented for the summer. It was simple, wood-framed, nestled into a grove of trees. Not luxurious, but peaceful. Intentional. When we stepped inside, he didn't ask about what had happened. He didn't press for details. He just wrapped me in a soft hoodie, handed me a warm mug of chamomile, and sat beside me on the deck as the sky bled pink and violet over the treetops. "You didn't have to defend me," I whispered. Ethan looked sideways at me. "You didn't have to walk in there alone." We sat in silence for a while, real silence. Not awkward. Just quiet understanding. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without the weight of expectation or shame. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. First, it was my cousin Rachel. That was wow. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Then my half-sister messaged. Hey, I shouldn't have laughed. I didn't know you were seeing someone like him. That one stung more than it soothed. But what surprised me most was a voice note from my dad. It was short, hesitant. Call me when you can. Please. I stared at the screen for a long time. I don't know what to say to him, I murmured. Ethan didn't look up from his sketchpad. You don't owe him anything. But maybe say what you've always needed to. So I called. He picked up on the second ring. Hi. Hi, I replied. There was a pause. Then his voice cracked. I didn't realize how far I pushed you away. You didn't push me away, I said quietly. You just never reached out when I needed you. Another silence. I was proud of you, you know. I didn't know how to show it. I closed my eyes. I wasn't asking you to be proud. I just wanted you to see me. I do now. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it changed everything, but because it proved people can change when they're willing to look in the mirror. Later that week, I returned to work, not out of necessity, but because I loved it. Waitressing wasn't just a job. It was how I learned people, how I learned myself, how I rebuilt my life when no one else offered me a hand. And that Thursday afternoon, as I cleared tables by the window, the door swung open, and in walked my father. He wasn't dressed in designer casual or playing the part of a confident patriarch. He wore plain slacks, a crumpled shirt, and an unfamiliar look on his face. Humility. He sat at the counter. I approached unsure. He cleared his throat. Coffee. Black. And maybe, if it's not too late, to conversation. I brought him the coffee and sat across from him, apron still tied around my waist. I always thought I had to be better than you to matter, I said honestly. But all I really wanted was to matter to you. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the mug. You do. I just took too long to say it. Later, as Ethan and I walked the shoreline near the lake that evening, hand in hand, I told him everything. He listened the way he always did, with quiet depth. So, what now? He asked. I looked up at him, a gentle smile tugging at my lips. Now, I said. Now I stopped chasing the people who couldn't love me loud enough. And I start being exactly who I want to be without apologizing. He kissed my temple. That sounds like someone I'd helicopter into a reunion for. I laughed, a real laugh, one that didn't carry pain underneath. Because now, I wasn't just seen. I was home, in myself. 2 weeks after the reunion, I was back in my rhythm, working short shifts at the cafe, spending evenings with Ethan, and finally allowing myself to breathe without waiting for the next judgment. But something strange started happening. Customers I barely knew started smiling at me a little longer. An elderly woman who always ordered chamomile left me a note with her tip that read, "You remind me of someone I wish I'd been brave enough to be." Then came the day when a man in his 40s walked in with a crumpled newspaper in hand. He sat at the counter and stared at me like he already knew me. "You're her," he finally said. I hesitated. "I'm sorry?" He slid the paper over. It was the town's community insert. Family reunion turns heads when tech billionaire arrives by helicopter. There I was, right on the front page, blurry but unmistakably me, walking beside Ethan. "You stood up in front of them," the man said. "People like that don't get stood up to." I was there. Not at the reunion, but in the field behind the fence. Watching. My stomach turned. "Why were you watching?" He gave a half smile. "Because I've been too afraid to face mine. My family. My past. But seeing you, it made me think. Maybe we don't need to wait for permission to grow." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded slowly. "You reminded me that it's okay to walk away," he added. I'd thought that day was just a personal closure, but it had rippled outward in ways I hadn't expected. That evening, Ethan and I sat on the porch again, a blanket draped over our legs and a soft breeze winding through the trees. I didn't think standing up for myself would make a difference to anyone else, I told him. He looked over at me, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. You gave other people permission to stop shrinking themselves. That's powerful. I exhaled deeply. I just didn't want to carry their version of me anymore. You don't have to, he said. You never did. A few days later, my manager at the cafe called me into his office. I want to offer you something, he said. I braced myself. I thought it was a let-go speech. Maybe too much attention from the article. Too much noise. Instead, he pulled out a small stack of papers. I'm planning to step down. I've seen the way people respond to you, your patience, your energy. I want you to run this place. I'll guide you for a bit, but it should be yours. I blinked. You want me to own the cafe? He smiled. Not just own it. Shape it. I sat there stunned. You've been here since the dark days, he said. You brought life back into this place. Let it reflect who you are now. I walked home in a daze, papers in my hand, feeling a storm of emotion rising in my chest. Ethan was waiting at the kitchen island, barefoot, sipping iced tea. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me. I just got offered the cafe, I said, my voice shaky. His face lit up. You're kidding. I'm not. I dropped the papers on the table and finally, after so much holding back, I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. Because for the first time, I wasn't proving myself. I was choosing myself. Later that week, as I sat in the corner booth going through paperwork, my stepmother walked in. I almost didn't recognize her. No designer sunglasses. No overdone jewelry. Just a woman with tired eyes. She walked up, slowly, nervously. I won't stay long, she said. But I wanted to apologize. I waited. She sat down across from me and folded her hands. You never deserved how I treated you. I was afraid of your strength, your honesty. I didn't want to look at myself, so I mocked you instead. My throat tightened. Why now? She looked out the window. Because my daughter, your half-sister, asked me last night, why were you always so mean to her? And I didn't have an answer I could say out loud. Silence. She continued, you didn't come from wealth, but you carry something we never did. Grace. I didn't reply. She stood, nodded, and left. I didn't forgive her that day. Not fully. But I didn't hate her either. Because growth isn't loud. Sometimes, it walks in with tired eyes and finally tells the truth. Autumn rolled in slowly, like the world itself was catching its breath. The leaves around the cafe shifted from green to gold, burnt orange to rust. It was the kind of season that made you feel like something was ending, but something better might be just about to begin. I stood behind the counter of the cafe, my cafe now, watching a little girl press her nose to the glass to see the homemade pies on display. Her mother smiled at me, as if we'd known each other forever. Every corner of the place had started to change. Not wildly, just subtly. Cozy lighting, handwritten notes tucked into menus with little affirmations, a bookshelf filled with community-donated reads. It was becoming home, not just for me, but for everyone who walked in with a burden. And yet, the real shift wasn't in the walls. It was in me. I no longer felt like a woman constantly walking uphill just to be heard. I didn't carry shame like a second skin anymore. And the strange thing? The more I embraced my story, the more others found the courage to share theirs. One Saturday morning, as I prepped trays in the back, I heard the door jingle and then a familiar voice. Calmer, deeper, older. Do you serve anything stronger than coffee? I turned. It was my dad. He smiled weakly. Kidding. I wiped my hands on a towel, unsure. Want a table? Actually, he pulled something from his coat. A photo of him, much younger, holding me as a baby. I found this the other night. I used to show this off to everyone. I stared at the image, my heart thudding. I don't remember that version of you, I said. I don't remember him either, he admitted. But I'd like to find my way back to being someone you could be proud of. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a beginning. I nodded. Sit. Let's start with breakfast. And we did. Not everything healed overnight. But for once, he stayed. Asked questions. Listened. Didn't deflect. That meant more than any apology could. Weeks later, Ethan and I sat at the very same family estate where everything had once cracked open. But this time it was our event. A fall fundraiser for community shelters, held in the field behind the house, with tents lined in fairy lights and music playing softly. The same field where the helicopter had once landed. The difference? No grand entrance. No spectacle.
Just people.
Kind people. Laughing.
Talking.
Sharing stories. My dad poured hot cider beside the snack table, a smile softer than I ever remembered. My stepmother handed out knitted scarves she made for local kids. And my half-sister? She sat beside me, holding my hand when the microphone was passed my way. I stood up, heart steady. I used to think family meant proving yourself, earning your seat, I said. But I've learned family isn't about blood or expectations. It's about who claps when you rise, who listens when you fall, and who keeps showing up. A gentle applause rolled across the space. No thunderous roars, just warmth. Ethan caught my eye and gave the slightest nod. Later that evening, we walked along the same gravel path we had walked out on months before, hand in hand, not to leave, but to remember. Do you ever miss the person you were back then? He asked. I thought about it. She tried hard. She held on longer than she should have. But no, I don't miss her. I thank her, because she got me here. He kissed the top of my head. And here looks good on you. I leaned into his side. Here feels like peace. I kept waitressing. Even after buying the cafe, I kept pouring coffee and sharing quiet words with strangers. I didn't stop being who I was. But now I did it for myself. Not to prove anything. Not to be seen. But because somewhere along the way, I stopped chasing validation and started living with intention.